An important part of game design is making sure that players know what everything is. That sounds really obvious and kind of abstract, right? Like, a sword is a sword, a gun is a gun, how much deeper can that really go? Well, your average game could have hundreds of different items, whether they're weapons, consumables, materials, or equipment, and with so many different items, the player needs to have an idea of what the item they're looking at is almost instantly, without even needing to think about it. You might think the solution to this is to make everything look completely unique, so there's no confusing one item with another, but that still requires some thinking. Like I said, we need the recognition to be almost instant. The main example of this is in games where items have some sort of tier. In Risk of Rain 2, all items have an outline. White for common items, green for rare items, red for legendary, orange for equipment, and blue for lunar or basically special items. This is pretty simple, but just having this distinct, consistent categorization is really impactful, not just for quality of life, but also for having satisfactory progression. Little bits of polish, bells and whistles kind of things are what really make a game's progression feel satisfying, so opening a chest and seeing a red item pop out of it is a big dopamine hit in this game. Plenty of other games have tiered items like this too, like Fortnite, or at least it did. I haven't played since 2019 and have no idea what's going on with that game now. But you know what I'm talking about, Golden Scar or whatever. Elden Ring, like other Souls-likes, have a bunch of tiers for item pickup visuals, and a lot of MMOs and RPGs have color-coded items like this as well. This doesn't just apply to small things like items, it doesn't have to be the bells and whistles like I mentioned a second ago, it can also influence much bigger design choices. To bring up an example that isn't just items, Zelda Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom also have this sort of rarity/tiering system but for their enemies. They have the default ones, which are typically red, then there's blue ones, then black, then silver, then gold in Breath of the Wild Master Mode. Except the silver and gold ones are actually just white with purple accents and piss yellow. I don't know, the gold ones kinda look shiny on the wiki, but in the game they just look piss yellow. Obviously, the higher the tier, the stronger they are. That's exactly the same as what I was just talking about, but with enemies instead of items, so to bring up an example that is actually different, let's look at the enemies in NieR Automata. Automata has a lot of enemies, way more than I actually thought now that I'm looking at the wiki, but you'll notice that they're all sort of evolutions of this same little dude. Every area has slightly different looks for them, and with their different designs, it's pretty easy to tell how strong they are and what special attacks they might have without needing a tutorial. This works so well partly of course because they're just well designed, but also because of the familiarity of that default little guy. We can recognize the differences easier since everything is built on top of or evolved out of that familiar base. As an example of this not going well, we can look at NieR Replicant, where it seems like they tried to do the same thing, but it doesn't work as well because the enemies are just sort of amorphous blobs. Like, there's a little one and a big one and a couple other slightly different little ones and slightly different big ones, and then after the time skip most of them get armor, but really they all kind of look the same, aside from the bosses of course. Prey also kinda has this issue. There's a little one, a big one, and then a bunch of other big ones with unique abilities, but they're all sort of just amorphous blobs. With Prey there is some visual communication about the enemy's mechanics, but Replicant is really lacking this. I do want to clarify that I'm not saying that every game needs to have this kind of evolutionary design philosophy. I just think Automata makes really good use of it, especially within the context of the game. The enemies are mass-produced robots, so it also makes sense narratively that they would be like this. Games like R.E.P.O, Lethal Company, and SCP Containment Breach have enemies that are so memorable because of how unique they are. Not just visually, but also mechanically, they're all really distinct. It's hard to get into the details of this without going really deep into each individual enemy's design, but as a general statement, I'll say that these enemies' visuals do a good job of communicating their mechanics, without all of them needing to be consistent with each other because they all have unique mechanics, because that's the kind of game that they're in. A game that goes really far with visual consistency is SUPERHOT and its sequels. There are exactly 3 colors in all of these games. White, which is the level geometry you can interact with, red, which are the enemies you have to kill, and black, which are the weapons you and the enemies use to fight. This on its own is really cool and really effective, but SUPERHOT's sequel/expansion, SUPERHOT Mind Control Delete, goes even further with this in a few ways. Spiky enemies that explode into bullets when they die, spiky mines on walls that explode when you get too close to them or shoot them, armored enemies that have the same white as the environment on them. I mean, this is what made me make this video in the first place. This is the best example in the entire video. You see this enemy for the first time and instantly know what their whole deal is. Another part of this is just kind of having a consistent art style in the game. There's not a lot of examples of like actual games that break this rule because generally big studios establish art style really early on and stick to it fairly well, and smaller indie studios have less artists so it's easier to keep their styles consistent. And even when they don't, it's usually not in a majorly noticeable way, to the point where it just kind of gets nitpicky to bring up. Generally, this is only a problem with beginner projects where the developer might not have the time or skill to make all their own assets, so they just go on asset stores and grab whatever ones they need with very little attention paid to their styles. If you do have a good example of a major game that has weird inconsistencies with its art style, you should let me know in the comments. Or if you have a game like SUPERHOT where the visuals are so communicative that you don't even really need a tutorial, comment that too. One aspect I haven't mentioned yet is visual consistency across different games. A lot of the newer Resident Evil games do this thing where they put yellow paint or tape on things that you can interact with or destroy to progress or get materials. A lot of people really hate this, but I don't see much wrong with it. Maybe it's a little intrusive or immersion breaking, sure, but games don't always have to be hyper-immersive, hyper-realistic, escape from reality power fantasies. Developers are allowed to let players know that they're playing a game. I'd much rather have this than some kind of companion character constantly telling me where to go and what to do. With that said, I haven't actually played any of these games, and I did get sent this picture where it is kind of ridiculous, but conceptually this is not at all a bad thing. Its use in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is kind of questionable with the whole wall climbing thing. I think the entire Uncharted series did this way better like a decade ago, but whatever. Also, in looking for screenshots of climbing in Uncharted, I came across this really not great article, which talks about the climbing mechanics in Uncharted as if they're like the same as in Breath of the Wild, which obviously those two are not comparable. One game is linear, one is open world, and I should make a video on climbing in games. Sure, we'll see if I can stretch that into like 5 minutes. That went really off topic there, but you know what I'm talking about. Like, if you've played Resident Evil games, then you know the yellow paint or tape or whatever means there's goodies inside or go this way or whatever. There's also stuff that's just as simple as, like, shiny thing on the ground means you can pick it up. Bronze, silver, gold is the order of rewards. That didn't come from video games, but it's in video games, so it still counts. I'm also kind of realizing that I actually did already talk about visual consistency across different games. I mean, the TV tropes link that I put in the beginning literally talks about how most MMORPGs follow similar color coding to World of Warcraft. I don't know, I've gotten way too far off track to get back to the actual topic of this video. I think it's funny how I'm saying this as if it's not in the script, but that's just not true. Literally all of this is. This part isn't. This is to prove that I have free will. But as I'm recording the voiceover for this, it's like I'm a puppet of my past self. Isn't that weird? It's like philosophical or something, I don't know. This video's over, by the way. You can leave whenever you want. Like and subscribe. Comment your thoughts. Thanks. Bye.